The phone rings on a quiet morning in July 2015. A woman answers. The voice on the other end delivers news that will never reach the man it was meant for. Kenny Stabler has been selected for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. There is silence on the line because Kenny Stabler died 8 days ago. For 30 years, the greatest clutch quarterback in NFL history waited for a phone call that never came. For 30 years, voters looked at his resume and said, "Not yet." For 30 years, the man they called the Snake watched lesser players receive the honor he deserved. And when they finally decided he was worthy, he was already in the ground. This is not just a story about football. This is a story about a man who was too dangerous for the NFL to celebrate while he was alive. A man whose lifestyle made powerful people uncomfortable. A man whose sins were held against him while other sinners walked freely into Canton. They ignored Kenny Stabler for 30 years, and the reason why will make your blood boil. Before we reach the voting rooms where old men decided Kenny Stabler was not good enough, you need to understand who this man actually was. Because Kenny Stabler was not just a quarterback. He was a revolution wrapped in human flesh. Born on December 25, 1945 in Foley, Alabama, Kenneth Michael Stabler entered the world on Christmas Day. His mother believed this made him special. She was right, but not in the way she imagined. Young Kenny grew up in the Deep South during an era when football was religion and toughness was the only currency that mattered. His father was a mechanic. His family was working class. Nothing was handed to him. But Kenny had something that could not be taught. He had ice water running through his veins where blood should have been. At the University of Alabama, he played for the legendary Bear Bryant. He led the Crimson Tide to an undefeated season in 1966. He earned the nickname the Snake because of the way he slithered away from defenders who thought they had him trapped. The Oakland Raiders selected him in the second round of the 1968 NFL Draft, and everything was about to change. Kenny Stabler did not become the Raiders' starting quarterback immediately. He waited, he watched, he learned. Darryl LaMonica held the position, and Kenny respected the process. But by 1973, the job belonged to the Snake, and what followed was a decade of destruction. Kenny Stabler played quarterback like a jazz musician plays saxophone. There were no rigid patterns. There was no predictable structure. Every play was improvisation at the highest level. He would drop back into the pocket, wait until the last possible millisecond, then deliver a pass that seemed physically impossible. Defenders would hit him as he released the ball. He would crumple to the ground, and when he looked up, his receiver would be celebrating a touchdown. Pain meant nothing to Kenny Stabler. Pressure meant even less. The bigger the moment, the calmer he became. While other quarterbacks trembled in crucial situations, Kenny's heart rate actually slowed down. He was built for moments that broke ordinary men. In 1974, he won the NFL Most Valuable Player Award. He led the league in touchdown passes. He guided the Raiders to the AFC Championship game. But the moment that defined his legacy came on a frozen December afternoon that would become football legend. December 21st, 1974. The Oakland Raiders versus the Miami Dolphins, the divisional playoff round. The stakes could not be higher. Miami was the defending Super Bowl champion. Their defense was suffocating. Their confidence was absolute. With less than 3 minutes remaining in the game, Oakland trailed by 3 points. The season was slipping away. The crowd was deafening. The pressure was crushing. Kenny Stabler stood in the huddle and looked at his teammates with complete calm. What happened next became known as the Sea of Hands. Kenny drove the Raiders down the field with surgical precision. Every throw was perfect. Every decision was flawless. Then came the final play. 14 seconds remaining, the ball on the 8-yard line, one chance to save the season. Kenny dropped back. The pocket collapsed around him. Defenders grabbed at his jersey. He was going down. But as he fell, Kenny threw the ball toward the end zone. His running back, Clarence Davis, was surrounded by 3 Miami defenders. The ball floated through the air like a prayer being answered. 4 sets of hands reached for it simultaneously. Clarence Davis caught the football. Touchdown. Oakland wins. The sea of hands became one of the most famous plays in NFL history, and Kenny Stabler became a god at Oakland. But he was just getting started. Super Bowl XI arrived on January 9, 1977. The Oakland Raiders versus the Minnesota Vikings. For years, the Raiders had been the best team that could not win the big one. They had talent, they had toughness, they had everything except a championship. Kenny Stabler was about to change that forever. From the opening whistle, Oakland dominated. The defense strangled Minnesota's offense. The running game pounded away relentlessly, and Kenny orchestrated everything with the calm of a man who had waited his entire life for this moment. He completed 12 of 19 passes. He threw 1 touchdown. He made no critical mistakes. The final score was 32-14. Kenny Stabler was a Super Bowl champion. He had led one of the most iconic franchises in sports history to the promised land. He had delivered when it mattered most. He had proven that his legend was real. By every measurement that matters, Kenny Stabler belonged in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But the voters did not see it that way. Here is where the story turns dark. Kenny Stabler retired from professional football in 1984. His career statistics were impressive. His clutch performances were legendary. His championship ring was undeniable. The Hall of Fame should have been a formality. Instead, year after year, Kenny Stabler was passed over. 1989, not selected. 1992, not selected. 1997, not selected. 2003, not selected. The years kept passing, the rejection kept coming, and the reason was never about football. It was about everything else. Kenny Stabler lived his life like a man who knew death was always one play away. He drank heavily. He made no secret of it. While other players hid their vices behind closed doors, Kenny celebrated his openly. He partied after games. He partied after practices. He partied whenever the opportunity presented itself. Women surrounded him constantly. His marriages failed. His personal life was chaos wrapped in chaos. And then there were the gambling allegations. In 1980, Sports Illustrated published a story that connected Kenny Stabler to known gamblers. The accusations were explosive. The NFL investigated. Nothing was ever proven. No charges were filed. No suspensions were issued. But the stain remained. Hall of Fame voters are old men with long memories. They remembered the drinking. They remembered the women. They remembered the gambling allegations that were never proven but never forgotten. And they held it against him for 30 years. The hypocrisy is stunning when you examine it closely. The Pro Football Hall of Fame is filled with men who committed sins far worse than Kenny Stabler. Men who beat their wives, men who abused substances, men who gambled, men who committed crimes, men who destroyed families and damaged lives. They all received their gold jackets. But Kenny Stabler was too wild, too dangerous, too unapologetic about living life on his own terms. He never pretended to be something he was not. He never issued false apologies. He never begged for forgiveness from men in suits who had never taken a hit in their lives. And they made him pay for that honesty. Every single year, Kenny Stabler waited by the phone. Every single year, the call never came. Every single year, the message was clear. You are not welcome here. The final years were brutal. Kenny Stabler's body began failing him. Decades of football violence had taken their toll. His joints ached constantly. His movements slowed. Simple tasks became difficult. But the worst damage was invisible. His brain was deteriorating. The headaches came frequently. The memory problems worsened. The personality changes confused everyone around him.
Something was wrong inside his skull, but nobody could see it. Kenny knew he was fading. He could feel himself slipping away piece by piece, and still, the Hall of Fame remained closed to him. In July 2015, Kenny Stabler was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. The disease had spread throughout his body. There was no treatment that could save him. He had weeks to live. On July 8, 2015, Kenny Stabler died at his home in Gulfport, Mississippi. He was 69 years old. The greatest clutch quarterback in NFL history was gone, and he died believing that football had forgotten him. 8 days after Kenny Stabler took his final breath, the phone call finally came. The Pro Football Hall of Fame announced that Kenny Stabler would be inducted as part of the 2016 class. 30 years too late. His family accepted the news with a mixture of joy and profound sadness. The honor was finally being given, but the man who deserved it would never know. Kenny Stabler would never walk across that stage. He would never give an acceptance speech. He would never see his bust unveiled. He would never hear the crowd chanting his name one final time.
The voters had waited until he was dead. Some people believe this was coincidence. Some people believe the timing was simply unfortunate. Others believe the truth is more sinister. They waited because it was easier to honor a dead man than a living legend who made them uncomfortable. They waited because death sanitizes everything. They waited because a corpse cannot give a controversial acceptance speech. Whatever the reason, the result was the same. Kenny Stabler was robbed of the moment he earned. But the story does not end with his induction. After Kenny died, his family made a decision that would reveal the final chapter of his tragedy. They donated his brain to science. Researchers at Boston University examined the tissue carefully. They searched for evidence of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, the degenerative brain disease caused by repeated head trauma. They found it. Kenny Stabler had stage 3 CTE. His brain had been slowly destroying itself for years. The headaches, the memory problems, the personality changes, all of it was explained by the disease eating away at his neural tissue. Football had not just ignored Kenny Stabler. Football had killed him. Every hit he absorbed, every collision he endured, every sacrifice he made for the game he loved had contributed to the destruction of his brain. And the sport repaid him by making him wait 30 years for recognition he deserved after his first decade. The injustice of Kenny Stabler's story extends beyond one man. It reveals something broken at the heart of professional football. The Hall of Fame is supposed to honor greatness. It is supposed to recognize the players who defined eras and changed the game. It is supposed to celebrate excellence regardless of what happened off the field. But that is not how it works. The Hall of Fame is controlled by voters who carry personal biases, voters who punish players for living unconventional lives, voters who reward conformity and punish authenticity. Kenny Stabler won a Super Bowl. He won an MVP award. He won more fourth-quarter comebacks than almost any quarterback in history. He performed miracles in moments that paralyzed lesser men. None of it mattered, because he drank too much, because he loved too many women, because he refused to apologize for being exactly who he was. The voters looked at his life and decided his sins outweighed his greatness. They were wrong. There's a lesson buried in the tragedy of Kenny Stabler. Greatness does not wait for permission. Kenny never changed who he was to satisfy critics. He never pretended to be a choir boy to impress voters. He lived authentically, even when authenticity cost him the recognition he deserved. And in the end, his legacy survived anyway. Ask any Raiders fan about Kenny Stabler and watch their eyes light up. Ask anyone who watched him play about the sea of hands and watch them relive the magic. Ask any quarterback who studies clutch performance about the snake and watch them speak with reverence.
The Hall of Fame made him wait 30 years.
But the people who actually watched him play never forgot. That is the difference between official recognition and true legacy. Voters can delay your enshrinement. They can make you wait. They can punish you for living outside their narrow expectations. But they cannot erase what you accomplished. They cannot take away the moments that made crowds roar. They cannot diminish the greatness that millions witnessed with their own eyes. Kenny Stabler deserved better. He deserved to hear his name called while he was still breathing. He deserved to walk across that stage in Canton. He deserved to thank his teammates, his coaches, his family. He deserved to hold that gold jacket and know that his sacrifices were recognized. Instead, he died believing the sport he loved had rejected him. That is the true crime of this story. Not the gambling allegations that were never proven, not the drinking that harmed no one but himself, not the lifestyle that offended people who never met him. The true crime is that football's gatekeepers let a legend die without giving him his due. They had 30 years to make it right. They chose to wait until he was gone. Today, Kenny Stabler's bust sits in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. His eyes stare forward with the same calm confidence he showed in every fourth-quarter comeback. His jaw is set with the same determination that carried him through impossible moments. But he is not there to see it. The next time you hear someone talk about the greatest clutch quarterbacks in history, demand that they include Kenny Stabler. The next time you hear someone discuss Hall of Fame voting, remind them of the man they ignored for 3 decades. And the next time you watch a quarterback deliver a miracle in the final seconds, remember the snake. Because Kenny Stabler did not just play football. He played football like every game was his last. He played like a man who understood that tomorrow is never guaranteed. He played like a man who knew that legacy is not about what voters decide in private rooms. Legacy is about what you leave on the field when the lights are brightest and the pressure is heaviest. By that measure, Kenny Stabler was one of the greatest to ever play, and no amount of waiting could ever change that truth. They made him wait 30 years. They made him die without knowing, but they could not make the world forget. Kenny Stabler is immortal now, and the men who kept him waiting are the ones who should be ashamed.